Everyone, could you make sure that you've turned your mobile phones off, please? Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Licensing Committee on Wednesday, the 11th of January, 2023, the first one this year. Members, please make sure to turn your microphones on if you wish to speak and turn them off when finished. Minutes. To ask members if they are happy to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of October, 2022, that could be found on pages 3 to 5 of the agenda pack. Is everyone in favour? Yep. Anyone against? Any abstentions? I'm sure that's fine, Mark. Thank you. Apologies, Julie, to call the list of apologies.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have apologies from Councillor Bowes, Councillor Dowling and Councillor Wickerson.
Thank you, Julie. Do we have any urgent business? I have no urgent business. No. And declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations to declare? Thank you. Do we have any non-members wishing to address the meeting? No. So we go on to item 6, which is the interim changes to the Breckland taxi policy. Craig Fowler, the Environmental Health and Licensing Manager, will present the report. Craig, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That will actually be me that presents that report.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Josie.
No, that's okay.
I do apologise, Craig.
So the purpose of this report is to review some proposed interim changes to the Breckland Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Policy. The latest Breckland Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Policy was reviewed last year in 2022 after public and trade consultation. There is and will be an intention to review the vehicle specification, or was a intention, sorry, to review the vehicle specification by the end of 2022, in line with the Department for Transport standards. However, the DFT standards document has not yet been released. So in order for the policy to reflect current legal requirements, this report requests that the Licensing Committee consider updating just a few of the conditions as follows. Section 2 of the policy, page 6, is Hackney Carriage Private Hire Driver, the new application procedure to add the following. That is, the applicant will be required to supply a DVLA check code so that their DVLA driver record can be checked online. And the applicant will be advised that they must register with the HMRC for tax purposes. The reasons for both of those are we do conduct the DVLA check, but it was omitted as part of the process that's written down in the policy. And the second one was the HMRC actually came in last April, which was after we had already formatted and agreed the current policy. The next one is on section 3, page 14 of the current policy, the renewal of Hackney Carriage and Private Hire driver's licence. Slightly different. So the DVLA check code again, just to bring it in line with everything. And it's slightly different for people renewing in that they must provide us with an HMRC share code, as opposed to us just telling them they have to register. So within 3 years, once they've got to their 3-year renewal, they have to actually have registered with HMRC and provide us with that share code. It doesn't give us access to any of their HMRC records. It just tells us that they've actually registered with them. So we'd like that added in line with the HMRC checks from last April. Then we have another one, which is to do with tinted windows, which is section 7, specifications applicable to all vehicles, to amend the following current condition, page 24, tinted windows. The reason for that was during the consultation on the taxi policy earlier last year, the trade asked if the condition regarding tinted windows could be removed. as it was proving burdensome to either find a vehicle that met the window tint specification or increasingly costly to have clearer glass fitted retrospectively. It's now the norm for the majority of vehicles to have rear windows tinted during the manufacturing process. I have consulted with 6 other local authority licensing teams in Norfolk regarding their policy on window tints. 5 neighbouring authorities have removed the window tint condition. The 6th one hadn't responded when I wrote the report and still hasn't responded to me. Replacing it with the current regulation under the Road Vehicles Construction and Use Regulations 1986, which says motor vehicles first used on or after the 1st of April 1985, the minimum levels of light that must pass through the windscreen and front side windows. The limits are the light transmitted through the windscreen must be at least 75% and the front windows at least 70%. Then we have 2 further ones, one requesting no smoking signs become a condition of the licence. It's actually a requirement under the Health Act 2006 that no smoking signs are required in public transport vehicles. So we would like to make that clearer in our policy that they are required because their taxis being used for public use. And to request that seatbelt signs are also added to that list. So the signs will need to say that they're required to be worn by all passengers where seatbelts are fitted. We would like to add that condition just to clear everything up so there's no misconstruing of what the regulations are. So having regard to the proposed changes and the Breckland Hackney carriage and private hire policy, members have the option to approve the new conditions and agree adoption into the current Breckland Hackney carriage and private hire policy, make amendments to the new conditions and agree adoption into the current Breckland Hackney carriage and private hire policy, or do nothing. Reasons for recommendation are that the Council adopted its new taxi policy and procedures document in January 2022. The document outlines the procedures for all matters related to taxi licensing. Section 1.5 of that policy states that a review of the taxi policy and procedures will be carried out every 5 years, although interim changes may be made at any time in line with updated guidance and policy changes. These new and updated conditions are considered minor and reflect compliance with other legal requirements, so it is not deemed necessary to carry out further consultation on these particular matters, and it is in the public interest to deal with such matters expediently. The conditions will assist with legal compliance with current legislation and allow the trade to purchase vehicles that meet current DVSA standards on window tint. To do nothing would not aid legal compliance and keep abreast of current legislation, nor would it provide the required degree of clarity to customers and enforcement officers. It would also continue to restrict the trade to purchasing vehicles that have window tint beyond the DVSA standards and current manufacturing standards. So the expected benefits are that Breckland is a mainly rural area and the licensed taxi trade provides a vital public service where many people do not have access to other transport provision. By updating the tinted window tint condition to current DVSA standards, the trade can purchase newer vehicles without the need to retrofit glass to an otherwise fit for purpose vehicle. The comfort and safety of passengers may well be increased as vehicle specifications are constantly improving on newer vehicles, and by allowing manufacturers tint, the trade will be able to purchase newer vehicles without the fear of expense of having to change the glass. The other conditions will make the requirements for licensed vehicles and drivers clearer to both the licensed trade and enforcing officers. So we've considered the implications, and under constitution and legal, we have it's not considered necessary to carry out further consultation on the minor amendments to the policy recommended in this report as they reflect compliance with other legal requirements. The recommendation is that the committee review and approve the proposed interim changes outlined in the report so that the Breckland Hackney carriage and private hire policy can be updated with immediate effect. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Committee, I note what Josie said about the senior licensing officer has consulted the other 6 local authority licensing teams in Norfolk regarding their policy on window tints, and 5 neighbouring authorities have removed the window tint condition. So do you have any questions for Josie?
Thank you, Chairman. Just 2 points, really. The HMRC code, we only asked for that after 3 years. Would it be possible to bring that forward, say within a year?
Okay, that's actually a requirement under the HMRC. They set the standard that they wanted. And when they set this, it's their policy basically, and they've set it out, just us telling new drivers, new applicants that they have to register, and then on 3 years they have to provide the code. They didn't want it any sooner than that, so we'll stick with what they've got for the moment, because there's no requirement under their legislation to ask for anything sooner than that. If that makes sense.
Tina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to thank Josie and the team for bringing this to us today, and very well done. And I'd like to see this with immediate effect for the tinted windows particularly, because I know this has been a bone of contention for the drivers for a long time. So I'm really pleased to see this, and I would personally I would encourage it to be adopted immediately, because I know they're all baying for it. So thank you, Josie and the team.
Mark, did you have a question?
I didn't, Madam Chairman, but I do agree with what's been written by the officers. I don't think you can buy a new car now without tinted rear windows. It's impossible. I've got black windows in mine. I didn't order them. I think you have to specify them, and it's an extra cost. So I agree with the tinted windows. The other HMRC, I understand that, and I understand no smoking. So I think, yes, I agree with everything that the officers are recommending to us.
Keith, did you have your hand up? No? Philip?
Yeah, it's just a comment really. I wouldn't want to oppose the proposal. I just think it's sad that there aren't cars available easily without cost where the back windows aren't tinted, because I think there are good reasons for taxis to be visible in that way. But if the car manufacturers are making them all with tinted windows, we don't seem to have much choice.
Well, Josie, just one question. I mean, I've got tinted windows in my vehicle, but I know that some manufactured cars have very dark tinted windows, but it's not all vehicles, is it? I mean, they're just more of a sunscreen tint than a dark, you can't look inside tint.
So I think it's important to understand that obviously there are different tint degrees. The one thing we will still be measuring, because we have a tint meter, as do all of our garages, is we will still be measuring the front windscreen and the two front passenger side windows to make sure that they meet these requirements, because we've come across a number of vehicles over the years where they have, let's say, added a film to tint those side windows, and that's not legal. They can actually be pulled over for that. And that did happen. I think I mentioned previously that last year, it was June or July time, myself and another officer went and joined the police on a day in Thetford, where we pulled vehicles, taxis included, over. Fortunately, none of the taxis had the extra film on, but there were one or two, let's say, high-class vehicles, costly vehicles, that were being driven, and they were actually pulled in for that reason, and they were made to take the film off at that point. There was one car where they couldn't remove the film, and the police actually took it away. It actually got put on the back of the wagon and taken away. So we will still be testing those front windows. It's just that the manufactured tin is becoming a major issue for the trade, because it costs a lot of money to retrofit clear glass in the rear of the vehicle. So whilst I understand the safety conditions, the fact that five of the neighbouring, possibly 6 of all of the neighbouring authorities have gone that route, kind of leaves us out of the pack without any real reason to do so. If I felt that it was absolutely necessary, you know that I would be fighting to keep it. So it's I hope that gives some kind of explanation.
Craig, did you wish to say something?
Yeah, just supporting what Josie was saying there. I mean, obviously there's different degrees of tint. I think obviously in the rear it's about safety, isn't it? About looking in and you can see what's going on. But I think just to add the point on the front windows, I think there's a lot of information out there that actually, from a public safety point of view, if you're another driver or a road user, is actually the ability. So say you're going down the road and somebody's coming up to a junction or a roundabout. can you, sorry, has the driver actually seen me? You know, I think we've all come up to a junction and actually, sorry, they're not looking, they've not seen us, and you slow down. If it's completely blacked out and you can't see the driver, I think there's a lot of information. So that becomes a public safety issue because you can't see them. You don't know whether they've seen you. You don't know whether they're looking, etc., etc. So I think that's a really important, just a point to make, that we need to make sure that, you know, that public safety element is there.
Thank you, Craig. Well, I agree with what members have said. It's a very sensible way forward and a recommendation. And if we don't have any more questions, could I ask a member to propose the recommendation?
We're all good to do it today.
That's excellent. Okay, Tina. And could I have a seconder, please? And that's Tristan. Thank you. That the recommendation that the committee review and approve the proposed interim changes outlined in the report so that the Breckland Hackney carriage and private hire policy can be updated with immediate effect. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. And then we will move on to item number 7, licensing fees and charges, a verbal update provided by Josie Hogan.
Yeah, it's me, actually. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we. So yeah, apologies, Chair. if that's-
This
if
is
that's
it's like
incorrect on
playing
the agenda.
cards. It's very interesting.
Um,
Right, Craig, off you go.
Okay, so yeah, just to update and advise the committee, I just need to make it clear, because we've checked with legal, that this is for information, because the committee doesn't actually have a decision-making power to set the fees. It is an executive function, so it would be through cabinet. The committee can make a recommendation, of course, but actually the decision-making base is an exec function. So it's really just for information, and any questions that you've got, obviously. So it's just really for fees and charges. Obviously, there's a rising cost of inflation at the moment. From the 1st of April, so the new fees would apply if they're approved, obviously through exec and etc. There's a proposal as me from the budget setting, which to increase fees and charges by 6.5%. There's 2 exceptions to that, which is zoo licensing and dangerous wild animals, which I can just go through in a moment. But basically, that is based on, we asked finance when we was doing the budgets, that is based on basically a treasury forecast, which I understand is consistent across the council. There's various forecasts that they've given. I'm not an expert in that, but you know, I think they vary from sort of 5 to even 10 or 10%. But basically, finance have used, as I understand, the 6.5% from the treasury over the next 3 years, which is basically just based on cost recovery. So in real terms, we're not actually increasing our fees. We're just following that inflationary pressure. So it's just so that's what's proposed. With regard to Hackney carriage and private hire licenses, we are obliged to put a public notice in there. So we would, I think it's 28 days, Josie, isn't it, that we need to advertise it. So we would put a local notice for Hackney carriage and private hires. There's a legal requirement to do that for consultation. So we would put that out, and we're not obliged to do, but what we'll also do is to write to all of the trade as well, just to advise them about that. If there's any representations, then of course we'll bring them back to the licensing committee. So again, I think as I say that, so you can consider those representations, and if you want to make any recommendations to exec about that, then obviously that process is there. Zoo licensing. So again, you might have questions on that. So zoo licensing, dangerous wild animals. Zoo licensing, we have put in a new fee, excuse me, a new fee structure. Sorry. Cough at you, sorry. So we've put in a new fee structure, which is really more fit for purpose. I don't want to be too technical, but the new fee structure follows the legal process. So for example, there is an intention to apply. So an applicant has to first do a notice of intention to apply, then they have to do an application to apply. And then there also is in the Act special inspections and periodic inspections. So the new fee is really just to set a new fee structure The old fee structure hasn't been reviewed for some time. It's basically based on cost recovery. So I think the old fees weren't recovering the fees and charges. And if I'm honest, I'll use the term that I think it was not formalised in that I think with applicants what was agreed, or there was a historical agreement that we used to charge an admin fee. So we would do an application fee, and then if there was a vet or the state veterinary inspector, which would do, we would then charge a percentage of their fee as an admin fee, which personally is a bit of a historical hang up. And personally, I think that's a bit messy. So the fee, the front end fee is increasing. So again, currently it's £178, but they would have had an admin fee. So in reality, it would be a lot more than that because they charge an admin fee at the end. Sorry, my laptop is just doing wobbly, just right at the right time. Password reset, sorry, I'll just tell you what the proposal is. So that will increase. So the new fee structure, and again, I can email this out if the committee want to look at it a little bit in a bit more detail. The intent, so we've put an intention to apply as £135. There's a new fee of 510 and the renewals are 680. So they are increasing, but actually the admin fee is not applied at the end. So they're just a different fee set. And I think it's also worth saying that I think also as zoo collections go, there is increasing guidance and code of practice on, sort of animal welfare, all of those sort of things, enrichment and those sort of things as the collections grow. It's not just, we may have another one at the moment, but with Bannerton, you've got big cats and, reptiles, and the complexity of it is growing as well. So when they were set a few years ago, obviously that takes a lot more officer time. And to be honest with you, £178, by the time you've travelled there with mileage, that is probably about 3 hours of officer time. And we know that it probably takes, 20-30 hours, doesn't it? I think the recent, we've recently renewed that, and that is nowhere nowhere is meeting the cost. So I think it's just to say to you, we've reviewed those fees, dangerous wild animals as well. It's a little bit more than 6.5%. I think again, it's just the amount of time, the officer time that it's taking, but that would go up from, the proposal would be from 392 to 420. So that goes up about £28, isn't it? So the dangerous wild animals fee would go from 392 to 420. It just basically that, and they would also have to, those fees are plus vet fees. So again, that's our fee, but obviously if they have to have a vet, they have to, we pay the vet, and then they have to basically refund us or pay for the vet's fees. So so hopefully that's basically what's proposed. Appreciate there's a bit of information there. I know it might be a little bit complicated, but I don't know if you've got any questions or anything that you want to ask, or you've got any queries with what's been said.
Thank you, Craig. I think that it's long overdue that this review took place to ensure that our fees and charges meet the cost recovery. Some of the inspections take a great deal of time. For instance, riding stables, for example, and fees have to reflect this officer time. And this is going to cover the next 3 years. So Tina, yes.
Craig, how much difference on the taxi licensing is it going to be? Because that's the one that I'm more concerned about, because we've recently really increased their fees anyway. And I think this might come as a bit of a blow to the trade, giving them one hand that they can get tinted windows, but now they're going to have to pay through it with their licensing. Seems a little bit of a double-edged sword, in my opinion. I can understand it with the zoos, because that is time consuming and etc. But the taxis, I'm a bit uncomfortable with that one.
Okay, and I should have been clear. What the fees that what I'm talking about are discretionary fees. So there are some statutory fees, for example, licensing acts. They are set in legislation. We can't actually alter those. So the statutory fees, obviously, that's what the law says. That's what we stick with. these are discretionary fees, so we have the discretion to set those fees. Taxi wise, you're looking at a new vehicle is a £15 increase. So you got 235 to 250, 215 to 230. For a renewal is £10 extra. Drivers are £15. Operator is a £25 increase. But it's also knowing that the operator's license is over, that's over 5 years as well. So a driver is a 3-year license, an operator, sorry, is 5 years, and a vehicle is 1 year. So you're looking at vehicles around about a £15 increase, and the others, as I've said, but they're over 5 and 3 years. So I think it's not actually any. So obviously with the zoos, it was extra time. The Hackney carriage is not extra time. It's just those inflationary costs that, unfortunately, that are around in the economy at the moment. They're just inflationary pressures that, and I understand from finance that 6.5% is a reasonable. It's somewhere in the middle. That you can read, sort of even 10% in certain, certain cases. So yeah, so I understand that. I understand that increasing cost. I suppose I only have to offset that is that, people are running a business. There is the cost there. We need to increase it. Otherwise, the taxpayer or the general, budget, the taxpayer will end up paying that, the additional cost that we're just incurring via inflation. So, there's an increased cost for the buildings and heating the buildings. There's an increase in staff costs. There's an increase in stuff that we're procuring and buying and plates. And, there's all inflationary pressures that are there. So I take the comment on board, but hopefully that just explained why we're doing it and why that cost pressure is there.
So Craig, these will be reviewed again in 2026 then, will they? If you said 3 years?
Yeah, sorry, they're a 3-yearly license. So sorry, what I was saying is, there's a 3-yearly license. I think what we said last year is obviously we came last year, reviewed all the fees and charges. We did a lot of work last year to make sure that they were all based on cost recovery. So I think we would carry it. So at the moment, this proposal is 6.5% just for April of this year. But what we will do is we'll carry out an annual review every year to make sure that they are actually on the button, if you see what I mean. They are based on full cost recovery. So again, obviously we can't look 3 years ahead, whether there's an inflationary pressure. Obviously, if we can't make a profit, so they're based on cost recovery. If we sort of find out that we are slightly overcharging, then there's the possibility that the fees might go up and they might come down. So in answer to your question, we'll carry out an annual review of those fees and charges. Obviously, we look at finance, we look at all the costs involved with that. But we'll I think what we said last year is, before last year, it had gone quite a few years where we hadn't reviewed it, and that wasn't good. So we'll carry out an annual review of the fees, and obviously as part of that budget setting process, we'll come each year and sort of update and continue the process.
I think the landing review is a very positive thing, because that way we won't get the slippage that we had before, Craig, when there was so much work that had to be done on it.
And obviously for the Hackney carriages and private hires, we will be consulting out there. Obviously they'll have the opportunity to make their comments. So again, we'll feed them back to you. And we'll see what they say. So.
Well, Josie has a very good relationship with most of our taxi drivers. And so I'm sure that the conversations that she has with them will, their comments will reflect back and be made. Do we have any other questions for Craig? Tristan?
It was just with regards to wild animals. What's the casework on that? How many cases are there? How many people and businesses are impacted by that?
Sorry, microphone gets switched off. We don't have that many. They are generally private collections, so they're not a business as such, although they can breed and sell. So generally they are private collections. I think we've only got 1 or 2 at the moment. One, we lost one, but yeah, so I think we've got one at the moment. And yeah, that's almost like a private collection where people have exotic or potentially dangerous wild animals. So I'm sure you appreciate that, the thing is animal welfare and also public safety as well, because obviously they're dangerous.
Tristan?
And just picking up on what Tina said, and we did, and I can't remember all the detail, but we did have a long conversation about a lot of detail before, didn't we? And I can't recall all the detail on what that was and how much of an impact that was on the industry, taxi-wise. And whether this, how much does this push them, you know, in terms of being able to run a successful business? Bearing in mind the hit that they took when we had to get our house in order before, I didn't know whether there was any leverage or whether any comment we could make. And in connected with that, it's a bit difficult. This is presumably for information only, because it's a bit difficult to make a really informed comment with a verbal report. I do like to see things written down to be able to really try and understand. I know that's the way I absorb information, and we're not all the same, but I just think it would be helpful.
Absolutely, yeah, I'm more than happy to email committee members. Obviously, it's sensitive, not for the public domain at the moment, but yeah, that's I'm quite happy to email the actual pound, shilling, and pence, if you like, of what that means in reality. I take on board the comment. I think that the answer to that is, yeah, let's put that out to the consultant. Let's see what the trade think. You know, not trying to be rude in my answer, but I'm not a taxi operator or driver. I don't know the answer to that, but I think the whole point of that consultation is, yeah, we will write to them. We'll put an advert. They've got 28 days. If they've got, you know, and I think then it helps us all, because then when we can make a little bit more of an informed recommendation or a decision, can't we, about what that means in reality? But yeah, to absolutely take the point.
Tina?
Craig, how long ago was it that we increased the fees? Because I seem to remember it wasn't that long ago, and I can remember it being a very contentious thing, because it was such a long time in the reviewing that we had to then whack it up so much to catch up with the shortfall. And I think this is where I'm having that problem, that it wasn't that long ago that we actually did it. My feeling would be that I agree with a yearly review, definitely, and that's something, but because it was not that long ago that we increased them, could we not potentially defer that until April next year to look at, you know, give it another year from when we increased it last time? So, you know, my question is, when did we, and could we do it yearly from that date rather than double bubbling it this 1 year? Because it seems to be 2 increases in 1 year, because it's not a year ago that we did the increase. That's my concern.
Okay, yeah.
Members, we're not being asked for a decision
No.
on this today. This is an update. So yes, it's good to have the feedback for Craig, yes.
The fees applied from the 1st of April last year.
Right.
So that'd be 1st of April 2022. Obviously, yeah, we've only got 9 months because we obviously need to do the consultation. So the last fees was the 1st of April 22, and this proposal is the 1st of April this year, 23. So it would be, if you see what I mean, between the old fee and the new fee would be a full 12 months. But obviously, we're only 9 months in at the minute, aren't we? 9-10 months, we're actually doing it. So it does feel that we've done it twice within the year, but we're looking ahead for April of next year. So it's the full 12 months from April to April, if that makes sense.
Philip?
Thank you. I share those concerns about the viability of the taxi businesses, and I'm surprised it is a year ago almost, but I just wonder whether, I question really the 6.5% figure. I mean, I think admin costs are probably closer to 5%, or I would feel that would be reasonable. And taxes are particularly vulnerable to the, you know, energy costs, and they're erratic and unpredictable, and they've gone up a lot higher than 6.5%. I think we could probably tolerate for a year, probably a lower than inflation figure. That's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Philip. Going back to Tristan's comment, our animal licensing officer committee, in case you weren't aware, is now a qualified zoo inspector, which is excellent. He recently did a very long inspection at Banham Zoo, which is a jewel in Breckland's crown, and they passed with flying colours, and they were awarded 2 weeks ago with their certificate.
Brilliant.
And I think it's excellent work that Breckland have got a qualified zoo inspector. So any other questions for Craig? Richard?
Yeah. How do you work the officer's time out on each individual case? Do you have time that they guess how much they're done? Do they sign on, sign off a particular job? Because how can we as a committee agree to 6.5% on everything, where if you haven't got the information, but I'm a builder, my blokes have to write down 4 hours one job, 6 hours the next, to justify the officer time. I can't see of anything in process to justify and calculate the officer time correctly.
Yeah, when we did it last year, we did, as probably said, we did a full cost recovery calculation. So there are calculations in there that is, yeah, that, you know, there's officer time, there's travel. So yeah, that is obviously based on an average job. We have to, yeah, some might take like, you know, we can't obviously price each individual, it's not an individual quote. So they're averaged out, obviously, you know, that's, yeah, roughly it takes X amount of time. And that's based on, I think, you know, Joseph was involved in that, officers are involved in it, you know, that's in, yeah, that's how long they actually take, based on experience and knowledge. So there is, you know, if we were challenged, there's a full, you know, there's calculations for each license there, of officer time, you know, to the, yeah, well, yeah, to the nearest few minutes of quarter of an hour or whatever. But there are, you know, there are basic, yeah, there are detailed calculations there. And all I can say is, yeah, I can just assure that that's been done properly and painstakingly, you know, over quite a period of time. So yeah, there are estimates there, you know, for officer time, the grades of different officers. So yeah, there might be a licensing officer, there might be a senior licensing officer, there might be 10 minutes of a manager, etc. But they're all, you know, they're all calculated out on the using a finance model that's done across the council, and that would include, you know, any things like, yeah, mileage or any on cost of postage or etc., whatever that might be. So hopefully that just gives an assurance that, yeah, they are based on those calculations.
Thank you, Craig. Are you content with that, Richard? Right, well, thank you for the update, Craig. I've just got one interesting matter for this, as this is our first committee meeting of the year, that in December, the council held the annual staff awards, attended by the leader and the chief executive officer. And I'm very pleased to say that Alan Goodhall, the council's animal licensing officer, received a commendation for his work on animal welfare. And I'm sure we would all like to offer him our congratulations on that. Sorry, Philip? Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. So yes, absolutely. Well done, Alan. And then we go on to item 8. So the next meeting, to note the arrangements for the next meeting on the 22nd of March at 10 a.m. here in the Angley Room. So thank you. This meeting is now closed, and we will continue with the meeting of the Committee of the Licensing Authority. All right, Julie. That's fine. Julie will now stop the live streaming.